a very good afternoon, everyone. Just heard from the previous presentation that this is the graveyard shift. Nevertheless, we try our best, and we try to make this session as interactive as possible. Right? So since morning, we've been hearing all about sustainability. Right? We have had various talks on various topics. Isn't it fascinating that while we have the COP28 ongoing not very far from here, we have a dedicated panel here who are experts, innovators, and making changes, including all of you, and a session on this topic right here. Right? So it is quite a fact, and it's self-evident that climate crisis is no longer contentious. Anyone is contending it, and we need to find sustainable and green tech solutions to mitigate the climate actions that we have, right? So we have a challenge and we have a solution. So this is what we intend to do here. Without getting much into the further ado, I would like to get directly started in the panel discussion, right? So let's get going. So Mr. Harrison, when I first tried to reach out to you last week, you were in a very important session at COP28 itself, right? And when we hear about sustainability or climate change crisis, rather, climate crisis, the first question that always comes is regarding fossil fuels and the oil and gas sector. But why has sustainability become such a big factor in the telecom and ICT industry? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, thank you for your question. And I think thank you for all of you for coming. I know this week has been tremendously difficult from a calendaring, scheduling perspective, many events going on, in particular the COP28, also here in Dubai. I think for us, we look at sustainability as a core pillar of a strategy, and it is in the heart of everything that we do. In fact, last year, we announced our 2030 strategy of what we call the 4 Ds. And one of the Ds is actually driving sustainability. So it's actually one of the most critical elements of our overall business strategy. Now, as part of that journey, we have outlined a number of initiatives internally in the areas that we can do. They range from upgrading our telecom networks to be more efficient and utilizing energy at the right rate, as well as utilizing alternative energy to fuel these networks, to even modernizing our fleet to be electrical as well. In fact, even the smallest of things we're doing, and they range from things like announcing over 500,000 green SIMs. These are SIM cards that are made from recyclable material as part of COP, to even having a broader workplace environment where every Friday our colleagues are working from home and we essentially shut down the entire building to conserve energy. Every little bit matters. But what we also realize is that this is not enough. As you know, energy usage, greenhouse gas emission is roughly 2 to 3% in the ICT and the telecom sector. Right. There's another 95% plus consumption and emissions out there. So what we've also seen is actually turn this around to be not just a challenge or a risk for us, but also a tremendous opportunity. As part of our B2B or technology services business, we've established sustainability as a service. This is a unit and an offering dedicated with working with large customers, MNCs, government entities, and helping them transform as well as going through their sustainability journey themselves. They include helping them identify the right initiatives, track them, measure them, so that they can also be part of this overall journey.
Right, super, thank you. And I think one thing you clearly mentioned was in regards to the emissions scoping. Maybe this is a question for you, Tony, in regards to what decarbonization efforts do we see at Nokia that are undergoing right now in order to tackle the emissions?
Thanks for that. I think there are some similarities, of course, with what Harrison said. First of all, you've got to look at the whole picture, and then you look at where you have the greatest impacts. A lot of companies in decarbonization will go for the low-hanging fruit because it's the easiest to deal with. They're not generally the biggest impact. So you look at your biggest impact, and for us, of course, 95% of our carbon footprint is our products in use by our customers. So where we have the impact on that, which is scope 3, is only by improving power consumption and energy efficiency, circularity, working with our supply chain as well, and getting them to decarbonize in the production of the components, the materials, etc. And then, of course, encouraging our customers to go renewable is one big area, but energy efficiency is the main issue to drive those things. We, of course, then look at how we decarbonize our operations. So Nokia is a network equipment vendor. We're in 130 countries. We have a target with RE100 of being 100% renewable by 2025, which means across those countries, even where there is not renewable energy available, we have to come up with solutions. So working with our supply chain, working with the local facilities owners, how do we drive those issues as well? And then really looking at very simple things around the products. And there is a number of pieces you can play with on the product level. And that's on the software, the hardware, the silicon, and even the services on top.
I think that's quite fantastic. I think since you mentioned about renewables, right, maybe I turn to Emaad, that as a solutions architect, that network architect that you have been working with Huawei for and have solution for your clients.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of carbon sinks and the coral reefs kind of projects that you've done in the past, and how have that impacted?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Sure. Fantastic to see still so many people awake. And so basically, from Huawei's perspective, we have been on this bandwagon for sustainability, now it's a decade plus of initiatives. Even across the Mall of Emirates, if you go by on Sheikh Zayed Road, you'll see our initiative where we are working with GESI, GESI, on the sustainability initiative, and also a lot of other organizations as well. And this, drive for sustainability, as it was mentioned by my colleague from Nokia, comes from a ground up on the product side. How you're developing the product solutions, it has to be re-engineered, reimagined. And with 5G, we have a lot of potential, and with 5.5G, even more. And when it comes to these products, bringing those products live to the market, I can give you an example of a couple of projects, like in the case of in Switzerland with one of our partners, where we have one of the forests that is now a carbon sink. We are using not only the cloud, 5G, but also blockchain. All of these technologies are coming together, coalescing together to come up with a solution where we are able to give carbon credits in a fashion that is, auditable, manageable, sustainable.
Super.
So that is bringing a real value to the overall ecosystem. And this is something fascinating that we are excited about. And personally, in the region, I took up this initiative for the organization to lead and manage and support this part. Well, the reason being that without having a sustainable network, in the long term, we are not going to be able to look the next generations in the face. So this is something we have to, we have to take it by the head and drive real change ASAP.
Okay, super. And maybe leading on the same question, Ibrahim, to you. How do you see the usage of renewables in the telecom sector? What has your been experience in regards to the powering of facilities, data centers, and networks? It's a question for Ibrahim. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
No, the question is, how do you see the usage of renewables in the telecom sector? How are the powering of data centers, the powering of networks, and what kind of trends do you see in that particular manner?
Yeah, no, I apologize. I don't know how the rest of the panelists heard, but
really
there's a lot of echo.
Yeah, there's a lot of echo.
There's an echo.
So I think when I was in the audience, I heard everybody beautifully, but I don't know how the hell everybody heard people here. So I thank our colleagues from Nokia and Huawei, but at the end of the day, there's 60% increased traffic year over year. So if we cut them checks today, they wouldn't be able to give us a wholly sustainable ecosystem. So maybe 2030, 2050, but at the end of the day, we need to put targets as operators and be part of the solution. So if you look at the classical case of recycle, reduce, and reuse, there's not much we could recycle on bits. We are doing work on power consumption, so we're doing a very good job to maintain net zero. So we've got some examples. They're very expensive, so I'm not sure how countries that don't have the money and the ARPU can do it. So Canada's okay, TELUS is leading the charge. We actually were the first in the world to publicly declare our goals for ESG. If you don't target it, you'll never measure it. And I think we're on track to meeting them. So we're good on the recycle piece. I think we're looking at all alternatives. Reduce, there's not much I can do when the average subscriber is going up 60% year after year. And not much on the reuse unless we architect things differently. So there's a bunch of things that I think we need to work with our vendors on. The first one is all our networks are 50% utilized because we're waiting for stuff to go wrong so the redundancy can click in. So is there a way where we can go from 1-to-1 to N+1 to not just create headroom for the operators, but think of how much power we can go down. So instead of having hot standby, we have warm standby. And the other one is, I don't think anybody's looking at compression because they think the cloud is that heavenly nirvana. Like, I hate to break the news to people, the cloud does consume power. So when you throw it on the cloud, you're just moving your garbage to your neighbors. The garbage is still in the neighborhood. So I think it's very critical we work together on things like compression and a bit more awareness. Like one of the keynotes at CES this year was beautiful. And somebody said, who's willing to get a degraded servers to be more green? Everybody put their head down on the ground and moved on. So I think to be part of the solution, it's not just the gear, it's the end-to-end ecosystem. And we cannot forget that we're here to serve our customers, right?
Sure. Just to add to that point, one thing that we could be focusing on in this regard is upcycling. In terms of how we're investing in the network, how we can upcycle in terms of the products that we're putting into the market. I'll give you an example, landfill waste. Last year's total amount of ICT equipment that could not be recycled from Huawei's perspective and had to be landfilled was only 0.63% of the total equipment that was brought back for its, buyback kind of a situation or something that was already end of life. It's only 0.63%, so everything else is upcycled. So that is one way of getting around this problem that we are facing in the industry, and absolutely it's a very critical problem. And definitely a lot has to be done. And then of course bringing sustainable power sources like our data centers, and most of our data centers now, like in Nanjing, Xi'an, even in Dubai, we have a lot of solar that we're bringing on board to help those things as well. So this way we can reduce the carbon cost per bit, I believe.
Yeah, I think
and I guess maybe I can just say, I think if you also, how much of your energy cost is cooling of your data centers, not just the actual data center themselves.
100%.
Yeah, so how do you deal with all of that and find new ways, whether it's inverse cooling or other systems that you can use?
But you have to think holistically of it.
Yeah.
One of the things we joke about in Canada, especially where I live, why not break a few windows in the summer? Like it's
well, I live in Finland, so.
You live in Finland, same thing. But I think one of the things we need to look at is running hot and cold. So one of the things we've done at TELUS is we have what we call AI for good. And we actually open source our algorithm that relate to climate. So we spent work with the universities in Canada on how we can actually run hot and cold, because today the data centers are rigid and they have a range. So we said, things are not going to break if it goes to 40 degrees. It sucks. But things will still operate at 40 degrees. So what I'd like from the vendors is what happens at 50. But everybody's so afraid, oh, no, you can't get it to 50 because all hell will break loose. Same thing when it goes cold. And I think we've open sourced these algorithms that have proven around 20 to 30% more efficiencies on energy usage. Because the more people do what they do, the better. So I think if somebody can take these algorithms and move it from 30 to 35%, we would thank them. So they're publicly available because it's part of our mission for good. Like we don't compete on the environment. We want to compete by leading the way globally, but it's available. Researchers have access to it. All Canadian researchers have access to TELUS data if they apply for it.
In a way, they're all interlinked, at least in my mind. I know we talked about increasing, decreasing the percentages. You'd be surprised, particularly for some servers in data centers, that if you turn it off, if no one complains, that means they don't need it. And even that alone is probably 20 to 30% of the actual energy already, right? And then you can move downstream in terms of the energy usage and consumption and different types of energy, how well and how efficient that energy is being used, whether it's data centers, the servers, and whatever equipment. And of course, many organizations now are also overlaying it with additional digital technologies, whether it's in AI, automation, to make it even more efficient.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think,
Sorry.
Lydia, we haven't talked yet, and some colleagues, but I think we need to be very clear. What's our commitment? Like, I look at the buckets that we have available, just like when you're looking at budgets. There's some stuff that's stupid, and there's the first thing you tackle, oops, and I'm freaking strapped to death, but here. So my question is, there's 50% of the operator's network is there waiting for shit to go wrong. What are we doing with the vendors about it, and how much energy can we save? That's the low-hanging fruit. And then we can put solar panels as big as this building to power our base stations. But that'd be the next step. So I think the first step, but it doesn't align with the mission. Your job is to make money for your companies, right? Then be sustainable. The more stuff you sell me, the better you're off.
You have to be
And then you can worry about sustainability. So let's be very honest, guys, right? So we're trying, I'm in this, if I was you, I'd sell me 3 of everything. And then we'd power all 3. So I think we need to have a conscientious look on stuff that we control and work together. Because I see these wonderful pilots, and by the way, I don't know where Salim is, but I saw there's a Dubai station that's completely solar powered with air conditioning. That is very sexy. That's like, technically, it's very cool. I'm not sure how much we can replicate it or use it, but I think we need to think outside the box. So the customers will not going to go for a degraded service. Because if I go degrade the service to be more green and more sustainable, my competitor will give them a better service, win them over. I'll be the most sustainable telco with no customer. So, I just want to be pragmatic.
Yeah, but I think you also have to, one of the problems is everybody takes sustainability to mean environment. You have to be financially sustainable in order to do any of it anyway. So I think it goes to that as well. And also, how do you work together as well to come up with the different innovation? Because you have people in your organization, we have people in our organization.
100%.
And they have to come together to do that innovation.
Okay. So I think what we established so far is, of course, there's a clear shift towards renewable energy. Absolutely. I think the telecom sector is trying to incorporate as much renewables and having a shift there to mitigate as much as emissions as possible, or to have a clear shift to non-renewable energy, right? Maybe now I turn a little bit on the green tech sector, Ramy, right? What are the key green tech technologies that you're seeing in the market that are quite impactful? And maybe talk to us to some of the examples, that because you're quite involved in the private equity space. And what are some of the key elements that are PE companies considering when they're buying out now in regards to green tech?
Yeah, sure. Ibrahim was referring to a very important point in sustainability, which is about the efficiency of utilizing resources and how to use the resources that you have in a much better way. Yeah? Energy play a big role in sustainability, renewable energy, different kinds of renewable energy, solar power, wind power. But energy storage as well becomes very, very important. Battery technology that we are seeing in EV and other stuff is a grid power, and how to distribute and utilizing different kind of power, so integrate the renewable energy into the existing power supply that we are currently having. But what Hatem in the morning session, he referred that telecom is suffering now with the single-digit growth. And if we quantify the sustainability as an industry, we'll see that sustainability as an industry, as a market, last year, it was about $16 billion. This will grow to $60, $70 billion by 2030. So the CAGR here is about 21%. So this is double-digit growth than the telecom industry. So what we are seeing in this arena, and before our session, there was a discussion about Alto, new kind of technology as well. They said that, it's by default, it's a green kind of technology, We are seeing that the evolution of connectivity will become about global connectivity, ubiquitous connectivity, how we can connect not only the terrestrial networks on the ground, but as well the terrestrial networks in the space communications. How this will be integrated, I think most of the R&D now in all of the companies is working how we can integrate the terrestrial network with non-terrestrial network to have much more ubiquitous type of communications. In Sky 5, we are having one complementary technology that Alto is having, which is the A2G, or air to ground, where we are focusing about how we can connect the aviation aircrafts, whether business jets or commercial jets, with the 4G or 5G network on the ground, and deliver the same broadband on the earth to the aircrafts, and let the airline passenger enjoy the same capacity, the same speed, and the same throughput as of the broadband service on the ground. This will evolve a lot the type of experience that air passenger is enjoying, but as well will transform as well the experience of the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything, like Yasser was talking in his sessions. So we are seeing lots of advancement in green tech technologies, eVTOL and advanced air mobility, how the drones will be connected. This is another type of connectivity that MNCs needs to look at. What is the spectrum as a resource will be utilized, and this is needs to be addressed in a very detailed way, because this is a very valuable resource. We shouldn't waste the radiations and the energy associated with that. We need to be studied as well from a sustainability perspective, because we don't want to lose much more energy from that. So this is in terms of green tech, I think lots of evolutions going towards ubiquitous communications, quantum communications, and the global communication.
Thank you. Yeah, I turn to you now, Dr. Lidia. It's been a little longer, but maybe now we go back to a little bit of framework, right? So we spoke about green tech, and in your, you have been a policymaker. You've been working with the policymakers all around the world, especially in the EU. What fosters innovation in green tech, and what sort of policies does the government need to have to foster green tech innovations, and what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you for this question. Firstly, I would like to agree with the thesis that companies tend to focus on low-hanging fruits. And this is not bad, but this is a very good beginning. And that's why we need frameworks for further advancements in green transition and sustainability. And when we talk about regulatory frameworks and standards, we have a few levels. First, I would like to mention work carried out by ITU Standardization Bureau over years, which covers a lot of topics related to green transition, starting with environmental aspects of electromagnetic radiation, electromagnetic compatibility, e-waste, or life cycle of ICT products, and many others. All these recommendations, supplements, and reports can support companies as well as governments in setting standards in this area. And the next level is to set goals for companies and for sectors, and this is the role of national regulatory bodies and also European Commission at the European Union level. And the good example in Europe is Corporate Social Responsibility Directive, which impose obligation on big companies to report certain KPIs related to ESG, all letters of ESG, environment, social, and governance, not only related to their operations, but also to entire supply and value chains. And of course, this is a big challenge, both for big companies, but also for SMEs that will have to adapt to all these requirements. But I strongly believe that without such framework, we will observe rather leapfrogging than green revolution.
I think
Yes,
on
please.
this point, at least to me, there's sort of different dimensions or different lenses to look into it. The first is what I call more of a PPP angle, right? The partnership between the government and other public entities to these corporations, as my colleague here on the stage spoke about. And I think at least here in the UAE, we're extremely fortunate. I think the country's leadership has really high aspiration, in particular to sustainability, not just because COP is in town, but overall for the country, and how do you sort of use it as an enabler for the future society. So I think that, as almost a state-owned enterprise or crown corporation, I think we're in pretty good shape. I think the second piece is sort of then how do we look at scope 3? Because scope 3, for me, a lot of times is things that you don't know, right? Because scope 1 and 2, I think for the rest, many of us who are sort of senior executive management team members, you can sort of figure it out, get the team on it, make it work. But particularly when you're looking at scope 3, which is sort of your partners and vendors and their partner and vendors, it can balloon very quickly. And I think for that, we are putting together a responsible sourcing program in place to really collaborate with each of these partners, where some of them, I think to the colleague's point here, are more SMBs, where they may not have the internal capabilities in place to actually go through that journey. So how do we sort of help them through? And I think the third piece is more from a financial area. And it is indeed correct. If you look at from a pure dollar and cents perspective, and I think Anthony raised this earlier, not all initiative will make sense from a pure business case perspective. So that's why, at least from our side at EN, actually earlier today, we announced with the Abu Dhabi Security Exchange a green loan agreement, which is the first of its kind for our company of $100 million, where we would utilize it to fund these projects that, at least in the immediate term, may not make financial sense, but because it is so critically important to the overall strategy of the organization, to the betterment of our society, and for the empowerment of our community, that's why we're doing it.
Sorry to interrupt,
Please.
but sometimes our egos get in the way. So have we asked ourselves, are we taking ourselves too much seriously? Let me tell you why. Today I attended my second COP28 meeting. Nobody cares about the ICT industry. We're less than 2% of the world's issues. So are we do this because we're socially responsible. Between us and our vendors, we want to do the right things. But even the regulators, no disrespect to the government, I'm sure they're trying hard, but they don't care. Like, look at electrical cars. There's subsidies. I don't see anybody subsidizing the equipment manufacturers or the operators to be more green. Not that they don't care, I'm sure they all care. But we do it, we publish our ESG targets because we actually want to be good corporate citizens. But I don't think as an industry, maybe we're taking ourselves too seriously and nobody cares. So I think we need to be conscientious. I haven't seen anybody says, well, if you're more green, we're going to help subsidize, just like we do with the cars. I'm not sure Lexus or Tesla or Toyota need more funding. So just one data point. The other one is I think we all measure what we like to measure to produce results that are favorable. We're human, right? Nobody's child is ugly, right? So I think we should align around one measure. And the only commodity we have as operator is bit per second. So what is the either energy consumption or carbon footprint on a bit per second or per bit? And then we can find out what the targets are, what things we can implement, which vendor does it right. Because Nokia, Huawei, you're great, but you can only talk about your gear. What about the other stuff I have around, right? The building, the cooling, the heating, the transmission, the optical. So I think these two things. One is, are we taking ourselves too seriously? Are we doing it because we're good corporate citizens? And why doesn't the government care in general? Maybe Poland is different. You'll tell us in a second. And the other one is, can we pick a measure that we all rally around that we can say who's good, who's worse? Because from I look what everybody's publishing, we're all fantastic. We have no problem.
Maybe I can comment on that because I
Then Dr. Lidia, I think he has
Everyone wants to jump in.
and we'd love to hear that opposing view as well.
I'm actually responsible for the CSRD reporting. So I think two things. Firstly, we're only 2%. That's only our footprint as a business. As we grow, as we become more connected, we may overtake some of the higher levels as well. So, you've got to think a bit more ahead. And also, I think we don't consider enough the importance of digitalization to other industries. Okay? So how will the energy industry change and become renewable without digitalization? So that's what we call our handprint, as opposed to the footprint.
It's
and
not your control or mine, right? Like
It's for our sales. It's our control. So it's the opportunity side of that, because at the moment all everybody looks at is risk and the risk of our footprint. But actually, climate change is about the opportunity and the risk on both sides. So that's one thing we have to consider when we're doing that. And the reporting, what the reporting brings, apart from a lot of work, a lot of cost, and I guess 5 times the amount of KPIs to report. What it does bring is comparability, which is what you were talking. Let's all rally around a number.
We need the right axes.
Yeah, but it's still comparability, because I can say one measure, Huawei can say another measure, Ericsson, whoever can say another measure. Are they comparable? We do actually tell the truth when we don't reach our target, when we report.
That's what I'm saying.
So that's important as well. And that will come out of the new regulation as well. You have to report on material things, even if you don't do well on them. So.
Dr. Lidia, your thoughts on that?
Of course, I totally agree that reporting is getting more and more complicated. And today, I do not represent government as such, because I'm just enthusiast of regulatory frameworks and standards, but I'm also representative of the private sector. But let me give you just one example from the event in Brussels from 2 weeks ago. It was a summit for circular economy for SMEs from Asia and Europe. And we worked in groups on many different topics, and suddenly SMEs from Asia asked me how we recognize if SME is sustainable and environmentally responsible or not. And I said, well, because we have a CSRD directive and list of KPIs, and that's how we know. And they said, oh, wonderful, we don't have it. So I'm just trying to have a look at the glass half full.
I'll just add to this a little bit, because there were a couple of points raised quite well in regards to, number one is an industry-wide standard benchmarking mechanism. So for that, like in case of Huawei, we're working with ITU in that regard as well. We call it Net Carbon Index, NCIE, now it's an enhanced version. So that could be one benchmark where we can look at how everybody is equal weighted in an equal fashion. That's one thing. Then I want to twist the question around a little bit, the situation around a little bit in terms of how we were discussing or deliberating upon what can be done from operator perspective towards the vendor or towards the regulator. From Huawei perspective, like for example, we have been championing a slogan, 0 bit, 0 watt. This has been since MWC earlier this year, and last year we had less bits, less watts. There's a philosophy, there's a methodology behind it, like for example, deep dormancy on the AAU side, or even on the data center side, like we're talking about, rather than having 1 + 1, why not 8 + 1? For every 8 have 1. Those kind of concepts are there, cross DC reliability. Those concepts we can bring as vendors in partnership with industry standards. But the thing is that then they have to be weighted and accredited by the operators as well. And they have to also play a role in this regard, that they point and score. Right now, for example, I can happily say within the Middle East region, Etisalat being a champion in this regard, cybersecurity. there is a very high weightage given to cybersecurity. There's real seriousness, but we do not see that kind of weightage or gain in points, or even when there's an RFP where there's a bidding going on. There's no weightage given to our sustainability initiatives that the organization have taken. So maybe that, including that into the process, will help a lot as well.
I think the point that Ibrahim was saying is that sustainability, in my opinion, the success of sustainability will depend on the financial return. So we have to give every initiative a financial return. What we are doing now in Europe and in other institutions is that we are putting green punishment rather than green incentives.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we focus about green incentives, the more that we incentivize SMEs, like Lidia was saying, to be sustainably responsible. Harrison was just saying that the initiative here in UAE to incentivize more the industry to become more greener, more sustainable, I think this is the right way to proceed forward.
I think it's great to hear different viewpoints and how everybody's thinking about it. So I think we have nicely addressed the sustainability part, we nicely addressed the climate, or let's say on the mitigation part, right? But we have, it's not much spoken on the adaptation side on what we are doing, right? So let me ask this question the other way. Often the infrastructure, telecom infrastructure, data centers, they are quite impacted by extreme weather events, right? And while you mitigate, that's one part of the story, but how do you adapt to that? And what kind, maybe I start with you, Emaad, what kind of strategies are client demanding, or what kind of work you have been doing from a climate change adaptation perspective?
Yeah, so from an infrastructure point of view, I'll go very basic to try to highlight from a very basic product. We noticed that this in extreme climate countries, Canada being one of them, microwave antennas, sub 20 degrees below zero, and you've got the whole antenna is just covered by ice. So having hydrophobic layers. Because climate change, whenever we are thinking climate change, we are always, there's the global warming concept that it, skews things around. It's climate change. There's extreme heat and extreme cold. We've got both extremes. And in this regard, like that is one example. And then how do we look at mitigation? You were talking about like beyond mitigation, but mitigation is very critical. Like in case of, again, one of Etisalat's subsidiaries in Pakistan, they had, during the floods, another climate disaster, catastrophe, there was a complete backbone outage. But we were able to recover the service within 36 hours. Why we were able to do that? Within 12 hours, we were able to have spare parts to the site. Within 36 hours, service was recovered. The reason was there were 32 different contingency plans in place. Right. So you have to plan for the inevitable nowadays, honestly speaking. And you have to make the environment, the products more resilient, like we have done earlier on, I think, from TELUS as well. There was a point like, why aren't we testing products at 40, 50 degrees? We are running data centers now at 30 plus degrees in the region. So this is something that we have started. So we are, this is very critical. I believe this is very critical because we cannot be, you go into a data center and you have to wear a blanket. That just does not sit well with me, at least. We have to make it more sustainable. So bringing water cooling. So we have got multiple data centers in this country right now. They're running on water cooling. No passive, no air cooling. It's water cooling. Water cooling means less wastage in terms of energy, in terms of the cooling expenditure on the data center side. And on the sites as well, most of the sites we're trying to bring indoor sites outdoor. That means they're sitting in the environment. So including the power systems, the sites themselves, they're all outdoor. And we're talking about Middle East climate. -5 plus 45, let's say.
So
just maybe one thing to add, since Emaad was talking about our OPCO and our friends in Pakistan. I think there's certainly an operational aspect to it and a technology aspect to it. Having the various business continuity plans in place, having the right partners come in and execute on it. In fact, in many cases, we also fly in our leading engineers from the UAE to these parts of the world to actually help resolve the issue.
Yes.
And in recent months, we've been very unfortunate in having some of these calamities hit. Beyond the floods in Pakistan, we had the earthquakes in Morocco and things like that. Now, beyond sort of the operational and technological, we also have the commercial aspect. And what we do is, because we're in the UAE, we would actually offer free minutes, free SMSs from communication. Because I think what is often underlooked is the humanity aspect in these sort of situations, right? So we will ensure that any communication standing to be had with the respective opcos in the markets in which we operate in is there, that they could be done in a free, effective way, you know. And we actually also work with the regulatory bodies in each of the markets to get these quote-unquote packages pre-approved so that they are already, you know, basically ready to be executed upon if and when these actually take place.
Okay, great. Dr. Lidia, any thoughts on your side? Tony?
Sorry?
Any thoughts from Nokia's side in regards to extreme weather events and how do you prepare for that?
For
Extreme
it's
weather.
really
The
difficult to hear.
extreme weather events and the impact on the telecom infrastructure.
Well, it's interesting. We had a inquiry this morning because there was a cyclone today in India, near Chennai, near our factory.
Right.
And there was no damage, and the factory stood up well and carried on. And I think, first of all, you have your business resilience plans if you're doing it properly. We're actually going through TCFD, climate scenario and risk scenarios at the moment. And it's very much looking at, okay, what are the risks? You know, from the long risk, whether it's from 1.5 or you're going to a 4-degree world or however you look at it over the period of time. But then also, what are your resilience plans? Even with your supply chain, because you have to think where your supplies come from as well. So, you know, we have a double-up model so that we can quite easily move production of certain things, and the majority of what we produce. So you have that, then you have the resilience of the, you know, the base stations made for 50, 55 degrees in the deserts. Those sort of things are already in place. So it's, in that sense, I think it's less of an issue, but then you can use technology for the other side of the risk factors, which is predictability. So predicting what's going to happen in terms of climate risks. So that's one of the, you know, again, you have both sides, not just your risks, but your opportunity of using digitalization and technologies to predict and pre-warn. So we've done some work around forest fires, for example, and having prediction of forest fires so you can control, because the issue with forest fires is they get out of control because you can't get to them quick enough and can't predict where they're going. So in that sense, you have that opportunity as well.
But I think one of the key challenges is we need to operate differently. So I'll give you a small example. One of our biggest video platform advantages was fast channel change. So once you go to IPTV, you'd feel no difference between traditional cable telephony and IPTV. So when we did our next generation, we actually decided we can shut the encoders down and have the customer wait for a bit, which is an acceptable risk. So that actually helped move our ESG targets. So instead of, like as you know, with IPTV, you have thousands of channels. So we have a range from 1 to effectively 10,000. At least that's what we have in Canada. Maybe not all full, but look at the amount of encoders that are running with no clients watching. So actually what we end up doing is we look at the bottom half, and during what we call non-peak hours, we shut them down. So when you want that channel, it takes you 5 to 10 seconds, which will piss you off as a client, but it does a lot of wonders for actually our ESG targets, which we think in this case is an acceptable risk. We will communicate to the clients why we're doing it so they're happy about it. But I think we have to think differently, just like change management. So TV, and I use the video example because for the longest time we kept doing things for TV from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. But that is busy hour. There's a lot of people that don't sleep. Yeah. We found out anywhere from 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning is the best time. So if you're going to push up a new software update or change something, do it at 9:30 in the morning. Everybody's working or getting groceries or so I think we also need to upgrade our mode of operations, and we are doing small pieces there. But we need help globally to stupid things like NEBs. We're still looking at NEBs compliance in the RFP. And we need your help. So if you guys run it at 70 degrees, Ibrahim, you're going to lose 30%. We've done so much on wireless. Like, and we have both Huawei and Nokia, so I can talk about both of them. They have great algorithms, right? Like we had all the bands lit up. We have 23 bands at TELUS. Look how much power we're consuming. Now we just keep one mid-band, one low band up at night till we have clients, right? Because you know how many clients are attached. So I think we need that thinking. And I don't know, would the wireless industry put the pressure? What is the equivalent of the wireline industry and the internet, right? So we talk about water cooling and then data centers. And I think we have to start, like we need to do a bit more. Like we're doing bits and pieces, but we need to, what's that next big step for all of us? Like what's that 10x
We should
goal?
remember that as ICT and telecommunications sector, we have huge potential to transform other sectors like agriculture. Application of IoT-based solutions can reduce application of pesticides and energy consumption and enhance reduction of food waste during storage, transportation, etc. There is many different areas in all sectors we can contribute to.
Yeah, and I think to go to your point as well, I think the whole industry is over-dimensioned and is traditionally over-dimensioned. I know one operator. I know an operator who
we live on reliability, so
Yeah.
critical, and we have so many resources that are idle for that. So I think we also need to be more frugal.
more frugal, but also less risk averse.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, great thoughts on this topic. Yes, just switching gears quickly to Greentech. Ramy, what trends do you see in Greentech, and how's the funding landscape shaping over the last few years? What are your thoughts on that?
Lots of trends we see in Greentech, but it's still, like we were discussing, I think the point about new source of energy, renewable energy, what else of new resources that can be invented to offset the natural resources that we have in our nature. But still we'll see more into IoT and space communication. Like Alto was talking in the session before us, we see more into how we connect everything together, how the normal MNC or mobile network operator will evolve more to cover the space in a much more global way and ubiquitous way. We'll see big movement in the use case implementation of the IoT and space communication in precision agriculture and precision manufacturers as well, and precision communications. All of that will be type of implementation of Greentech. But what we are keen of is the point that Ibrahim and Anthony was always referring to, which is the efficiency of resources and how sustainability can be another equation of cost saving of the operation of the firm. And this can enhance the profitability after that. So how we can see that sustainability is not just an emotional topic and that we want to enhance our nature, but rather than is that to see in a much more conservative way and a much more eager way how we can optimize the utilization of the resources inside the firm, how we can optimize our cost, and how we can increase by that our profitability. So this is what we see.
In sort of the area of Greentech as well, so sort of within my remit, not only do I have the group strategy with an integrated sustainability function, I also have our $250 million USD corporate venture capital fund that reports up to me as well. So what we have seen recently, at least on that front, talking about Greentech, aside from the fact that it's still what I call early innings, right? It's still very early in its transformation journey, and I think a lot of the colleagues here on the stage had talked about electric, different energy usage and alternative energy and things like that. The notion on carbon credits and carbon markets has been on fire the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months. And this, I would say, run the entire gauntlet from the actual platform and exchange to which companies can go on and buy credits to help offset if their initiatives are not done properly or it's not financially feasible, to even upstream to really going through and vetting the projects to make sure it is accredited and validating it so that you're just not investing money in this carbon offset that is actually not real, to even the other angle of helping businesses and SMEs, particularly from what I call emerging markets, global south markets, to actually help them create projects to become carbon neutral and carbon offsetting as well. So I think that whole ecosystem is very exciting.
Okay, super. I think maybe a follow-on question to that is, and I think in the interest of time and for the interest of the audience, how do you build a sustainable strategy? And what are your thoughts on that? And what could companies do to build a sustainable strategy?
Yeah. Should I?
I think you can continue and then...
No, I'll start. I think for us, there's sort of 3 steps. Aspiration, collaboration, execution. Aspiration, as I mentioned, set bold, big dreams. At least for us, it is tightly integrated to our business strategy. And beyond the fact that we launched the green loans yesterday, we also announced our broader commitment to being net zero Scope 1 and Scope 2 in our entire footprint by 2040. Collaboration, working with our partners, many of whom are on this stage, along with others to make it happen in the broader ecosystem, including the government and others. And execution, really tracking against it so that it's not something that we look at in 5 or 10 years, but every quarter, every year, every 6 months, we look at the right metrics that are aligned upon to see where we're at.
Oh, thank you. Anybody would like to add?
Yeah, I would just add to Harrison what he was just saying is that as well, set your right priorities. So from where to start. So in the sustainability strategy as well, you have to set clearly what comes first and what comes second. And this is very important. E&D is very smart in setting very tough and clear targets for their sustainability goals. Net zero for UAE operation by 2030, this is very firm, very clear. And from a priority perspective as well, they set the priorities in a clear way. From our side in Sky 5 and SCIT, I think we have put as well focus about in our R&D, how we can reduce our equipment size and lightweight as well for reducing the consumption of fuel for the aircraft, and by that it can enhance the operation of the airlines as well.
I'll go ahead and go with after that. So basically from Huawei's perspective, so the strategy is actually, like this last mentioned, they have a 3-prong, we've got a 4-prong strategy. So basically, it starts off with number 1, what are we trying to do? From Huawei's side, we've had for the longest of time, connecting the unconnected. So digital inclusion is very critical. And we believe that Huawei's success does not come from tier 1 deployments. They come from tier 3 deployments. We go where no other vendor would go. We strive and struggle where no one else would. Highest mountains, most difficult terrains, most difficult environments. Second is secure and trustworthy networks, which is very critical. And that brings, I think, when we develop products based with that in mindset, it brings real value long term. Third is environmental protection and sustainability of those environmental aspects. And lastly is, again, having a more harmonious ecosystem. And this ecosystem part is very critical. Huawei's growth, or I think everybody on this panel, I think everybody's growth is dependent on everyone else. It's a symbiotic, it has to become a symbiotic relationship. We have to work together with the app providers. We have to work with new technologies like blockchain, AI. We did not talk about AI because one of the most important things is that when we're talking about, if, for example, like for TELUS, it takes 20 seconds to bring up a channel that is in dormancy state because they're trying to, balance things out. What if we could bring AI into the equation and it could intelligently, predictively provide those services and scale up rapidly? Like, for example, in Huawei's side, we have not on the IPTV, that's a very good idea. We'll start working on it. But on the radio side, we have achieved right now, we are at, for a whole site, we are under 10 watts in dormancy. So, and we can scale up in second level. Within a second, we can scale back up. So that is something that we are not doing it, there's no magic, there's AI that's at work over there. So we bring all of these things together, so I think success is possible. And I think the books will also be green. Not only the socio-economic aspects will both come together.
Sure, okay. Maybe Dr. Lidia at T-Mobile. I think we end up with this question for all the panelists, but we want to hear what's
Very briefly, just from the perspective of Deutsche Telekom team, I can say that when we talk about sustainability strategy, of course, setting targets, ambitious but realistic, defining measures, monitoring and reporting are obvious and crucial. But what is also important and less obvious is to create innovations in rare area, like, for example, application of sensors and IoT to monitor and protect rare species or monitor quality of water in rivers, will open minds and inspire others to contribute to sustainability and environmental challenges.
Perfect.
I think
Maybe it's the last one. I think our time's up.
Yeah, I'll be
10
really
seconds.
quick.
Yes.
I'll be really quick. So from my perspective, it's purely about collaboration, enablement, and engagement. And collaboration, we've heard. Enablement, we have it in our strategy. It's one of the pillars, etc. But it's the people in your organization that actually will implement sustainability, not the strategy, not the purpose. It was actually your R&D engineers and all the people working on it. And then engagement, because we have to work together.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, esteemed panelists. It was a pleasure. And I think to the audience as well. So we ended up touching a lot of topics, from climate change to adaptation, mitigation, strategy, 5G, extreme events, circular economy, green tech. Thank you very much, and I hope this was all helpful to everyone. Thank you.